What's popping my pimples? Welcome back to Wallace Pineapple, Sonic in the public domain. No, this is not the title for the third storybook game, but in fact, an interesting hypothetical. Quite sent me this little comic from 7th Boy Dynamite about what they think would happen if Sonic entered the public domain. We've heard your demands, and heard forth, Sonic shall be public domain. One day later. Are you f***ing kidding me? Now, as funny as this comic is, it did get me thinking, what would happen if Sonic became a character that anyone could create and profit from? I thought it'd be a pretty interesting thought exercise to have with you all. So let's set the rules here. This would never happen, but because it would make this a lot more of an interesting hypothetical, let's just say Sega releases everything, and I mean everything, into the public domain to do with Sonic, from his inception all the way to the latest release. Nothing is off the table in what can be remixed, remade, etc. I think the first thing that Sonic would do in this situation is subscribe to Wallace Probably. Okay, let's actually get into this though. During the first year of Sonic's venture into the public domain, looking at examples such as Winnie the Pooh and Steamboat Willie in recent memory, I strongly believe this dude would immediately get a terrible horror movie adaptation. Now, I don't think we'd get like a Sonic EXE movie. Instead, I think it would be a more stereotypical slasher movie with an evil-looking Sonic or someone in some Sonic getup. And the film itself would be made by someone who knows little or cares very little about Sonic as a franchise. It would be the shocking, oh, look what they're doing to Sonic when the first trailer drops, only for everybody to forget about it like a week later. Now, what Sonic does have that Winnie and Mickey don't are fan games. I think in this first year, the market would be flooded with previously made Sonic fan games getting proper releases to platforms such as Steam, followed by console ports in the years to come. I'm sure these fan games would get updates to justify a purchase on these platforms, but I'm also sure fans would just be happy to support these titles. When it comes to the specific types of titles in these first few years, it's mostly going to be 2D platformers or remakes of existing Sonic titles. Like for the 2D platformers, I'm thinking of re-releases for Sonic before and after the sequel, the reimagining of Sonic Triple Trouble that came out a few years back, and while not exactly 2D, Sonic Roboblast 2 would easily become one of the most highly rated Sonic games of all time and would sell a crap ton. Hell, throw in ring racers in there and profit margins would be insane. Of course, they'd have to remove a bunch of non-Sonic elements to those games, specifically with ring racers, but I think they can manage. Now, this barely scratches the surface for the 2D and classic Sonic games that would flood Steam. Just know there would be a ton. When it comes to remakes, I'm thinking of Project 06, Sonic Riders Tournament Edition, Unleashed Recompiled, and Project Reignition. These would totally rock the market and further affect the conversations around Sonic's history of games and his output post-Adventure 2 and Heroes. Like, the revisionist history would be at an all-time high, I fear. But fans have shown time and time again that they know what to do with these games and how to improve them in more ways than one. I also believe that at this point, fans would have an incentive to create PC ports for just about every Sonic game, or to make their own definitive editions for existing titles, because Sega is putting all these games into the public domain. Fans can do whatever they want with them. They can repackage them, add their own modifications, and since they could profit off this, more talented teams would come together to make this a reality. Speaking of Sega, I think they would be in a really tough spot after this. Sega would need to focus on delivering AAA experiences going forward with their Sonic releases, if they're not going to include those in the public domain. Something that, let's be fair, they've struggled to do since the 2000s. They've gotten close a few times, like with Sonic as well as Shadow Generations, but I honestly think we would go back to the output of the Dark Ages in the 2010s. Sega would focus on things fans could not replicate, like animated series, merchandise on store shelves, and the movies with Paramount. I think after a decade of Sonic being in the public domain, they just pull out of the video game market with the franchise, since by that point, fans will have filled every niche and given Sonic fans everything they've wanted. Which raises an interesting proposition. For a franchise like Sonic to go fully into the public domain, a character that's had so many interpretations in the past, a definitive version of the character would no longer exist. While there truly isn't one agreed upon image for the character, Sega does have control of the overall image of Sonic. To most, it's that ugly 3D model that hasn't been updated since the 2000s, and the games that Sonic is in. If he were to enter the public domain, I think we would see the splitting of Sonic into its own properties. Like Stadium Sonic would have its own little corner of games and animations, etc., as well as Fleetway Sonic or OVA would. What I'm trying to say is, these more niche Sonic universes would start having more of an equal voice compared to the mainline Sonic games or the movies. It would even out the playing field a lot more, with all corners getting their own works on a much more consistent basis than they do now. But the cost of all this would be the lack of a unifying image of what Sonic is anymore. There'd be so many different takes and interpretations on the character that there would be no main Sonic that everyone could point to. This would also lead to a much greater divide among the fan base, but also the split up fan base would be having pretty much all their needs met. In a sense, it would kind of be like the EXE fan base. They're in their own corner, kind of separate from the rest of the Sonic fan base. Sure, there is some crossover, but they kind of got their own lore and universe that hardly ties into the mainline Sonic canon now. Speaking about Sonic EXE, I don't see that fandom getting many games. The closest I could see is a game like The Disaster or Outcome Memories. Those are survival horror games in the vein of Dead by Daylight or Friday the 13th that can be found on Roblox, which I've done a whole video covering on the main channel. I could see something like that being made, but outside of that, I honestly think Sonic EXE lives best as a book series. While the stories are based off these haunted versions of Sonic's Sega Genesis games, so much of that community's lifeblood is in its writing. Whether it be the backstory of these different forms of Sonic EXE, to the actual events of the people finding the game, playing it, and finding out what happens to them afterwards. These would serve a similar market as those Five Nights at Freddy's books do, build out the universe and the lore for superfans, all while being aimed at a younger audience of horror enthusiasts. Another section of Sonic worth revisiting, since I only brought it up in passing, Stadium Sonic, aka Archie Sonic. I think the whole American Sonic canon would have a massive revitalization with the character entering into the public domain. Considering the licensing issues with a lot of these characters already, to have all those problems go away, I could honestly see somebody like Ian Flynn coming back to that universe and make a really strong push for it. Or to simply reintroduce these characters into the IDW Sonic comics. It really is the splitting of two paths. He could go full passion project and build his own ideal Sonic universe, or he can make a push to incorporate what he grew up loving into the main franchise. But that's only considering if Sega continues the IDW Sonic comics. I mean, IDW has their own contract with Sega. Would that even need to exist anymore? Or could IDW just continue the comics on their own grounds, not needing Sega's permission for anything else? And again, would Sega even need to be making anything else? Or would they just be making Sonic merchandise at this point? Another interesting thing, Sonic OCs would now be legitimately profitable. Unfortunately, a certain electric hedgehog would not qualify for this, as they would need another massive property to enter the public domain as well. But for many others, Sonic fan characters would start appearing in their own original games and worlds. Like, imagine playing an Elder Scrolls game and one of the species is like a Mobian. There are just so many more conversations that could be had here, like what the music situation would look like going forward, or Paramount's universe for Sonic, all the way down to IDW and again, their license with Sega. But that's where you come in. I want to know what you would want to see out of a public domain Sonic. What do you think would happen? What would you want to happen? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks to my patrons for making videos like this possible, and you for watching. Okay, bye.